Inside this room, all of my dreams become realities, and some of my realities become dreams.
What in the wide, wide world of sports is going on here? Alive! It's alive! It's alive!
You are listening to The Wilder Ride, getting wilder by the minute. Here are your hosts, Alan Sanders and Walt Murray.
And welcome back, everyone, to The Wilder Ride, Getting Wilder by the Minute. It's a podcast where we break down and celebrate the films of Gene Wilder 1 minute at a time. And we are in the midst of Season 1, and we are dedicating it to Young Frankenstein. I'm your host, Alan Sanders.
And I'm your co-host, Walt Murray.
And once again, joining us, he's taking a break from the looking for the lost tablets of the Crusade. He's over here, Tom Taylor, from Indiana Jones Minute, among others. Welcome back, Tom.
Thank you. It's great to be back.
It's great to have you here and to lend a little bit of credibility to what is otherwise two aging, middle-aged white guys just doing nothing on a Sunday.
Make that 3 aging, middle-aged white guys.
Well, when we last left he is young Frankenstein, but Dr. Frankenstein, we see the lifeless face of the skull glow still on Peter Boyle's makeup, the creature effect, and we will end with the very start of Gene Wilder deciding it's time to perform CPR on what is still already a dead corpse. Let's go ahead and get to it. At the very beginning here, we still see the effect that is, I think is still a very, very cool practical effect, using the fiberglass cast creature's head with the light bulb placed inside, connected to the dimmer switch that allowed the production team to dim up and down the skull effect on the creature. And Tom, to start in this minute, I still think it's such a cool effect because I would have never guessed that it was actually glowing on him. I was trying to figure out how they did they do something where they were blending, much like we mentioned with Terry Gard in the last scene? Did they have something like blending underneath? Or was it just kind of like two scenes happening together? But it's not. It's actually showing on his face.
Yeah. I mean, like any great, simple effect, it looks exactly like what they wanted to look like. But then when you find out what they actually did, you're like, oh my God, that is so simple and so awesome, and it works perfectly. That's incredible. Yeah, like I hadn't known about that until you mentioned it last minute, and it's amazing. Yeah, it looks like that it's glowing from inside his head.
It really does. And you get the sense that because you're into it, you're into the story, there's the lightning flashes, there's been the sparks, the electricity, everything going on. You almost want to now, I find myself as if I'm now Dr. Frankenstein, and I'm excited. It's like, look, it's glowing. It must be working.
Something's happening.
Something's happening, exactly.
Yeah.
I don't hear the robot going, danger, danger, Will Robinson. No, I'm like, oh, right. Look, it's getting ready he's coming to life. I mean, that's the first thing I think.
But it's weird. Like, do we know if Gene Wilder sees this? We never see him like react to that effect, and he seems like he's reacting now as if it's a 100% failure. But you think that if he actually saw that glowing, he might be, oh, something's happening. Like, he's not alive, but this is a start or something like that.
Well, I think in the last minute he does look down when we then get to this effect. He looks down. As he's crying to the heavens, give my creation life, we cut away to the backdrop of lightning cracking in the background, and then it cuts to Peter Boyle's face. I have to imagine he's sensing that, because as soon as the glow finally subsides, and this is weird, Walt, the storms in Transylvania apparently just immediately stop when you're done with them.
Yeah, you throw the last switch. Yeah,
he gets the stethoscope out and he does check for a heartbeat. So it seems like he's checking for signs of life.
Yeah, he really believes that this has worked and that he's about to have a living creature.
That's true. Yeah.
Now, I'm going to point out a small little detail here. I said in the very first episode, actually in the 0 episode, be on the mustache alert, because Gene Wilder's mustache makes kind of changes throughout scenes. 2 minutes ago, or a few minutes back, he had the real wide gap. It almost looked like a reverse Hitler, where he had this big wide spot where instead of having the Hitler stash. When we see him here, it's almost completely across and much wider. It's not doing the swoop that it was doing earlier.
No, it's kind of filled in and thicker. And who knows how long the time frame was between that scene and this scene when they filmed it. But his mustache has changed significantly.
Now, this is one thing you only notice when you're dumb enough to watch a movie 1 minute at a time.
That's right.
Sure.
Just a movie.
Yeah. You brought this on yourselves.
So he does look like he's not necessarily upset. He's not super excited, but he does want to get down because he's been up in the clouds here. The body is smoking. We've got all of this around him, so he yells down to shut everything down. Shut it off and bring me down. And we see cutaways to all this equipment slowly coming, decharging, I guess, turning off the gear.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and he believes that the work is done. Well, and in the 1931, it was immediate. They went from all the power surging through the body to the creature's hands starting to move and the heart starting to beat. So if Dr. Frankenstein read those notes, he would have seen that that's how it works. That you reverse the poles, you run the electricity, and the creature comes to life. So he was really anticipating that as soon as they started the descent, he'd be able to hear the heartbeat and the creature would be alive.
Yeah.
Well,
that's heartbreaking.
And I think that adds, I think, a nice comedic bit for us here in this movie because we don't have the creature come instantly to life. And makes you wonder, did it work? And are we back to doubting whether or not Victor Frankenstein, was he a cuckoo? Because soon as Gene finds his, soon as Dr. Frankenstein finds his grandfather's novel or finds his notes, he's all in. We mentioned that he doesn't waver. He, at that point, he's like, oh my God, it could work. And so he's been all in since that point. Now we're getting the sense that, well, could we have had the table turned on us once again by the writers of the film that, it's not instantly coming to life?
Well, and Frederick has to now deal with the fact that, he's got the God complex. He believes that he is bringing life to his creature. And now as he starts the descent and there's no heartbeat, there's no movement, there's no indication of life, he's going to have to deal with his failure and the kind of coming to grips with the God complex not being true. Yeah.
And I think any good book about screenwriting will tell you never to pass up an opportunity to bitterly disappoint Gene Wilder, because something great will happen.
Very true.
We're referencing, as we will many, many more times in these minutes, the classic 1931 and then all the following movies of Frankenstein. But I found this an interesting tidbit that Gene Wilder chose. He said he didn't fashion his performance on Frankenstein's Colin Clive. Rather, he said, I mimicked the refined English actors of Robert Donat and Leslie Howard, saying his acting, tongue wear, and eyeliner all evoke the style of a 30s matinee idol. And so that's the style he was going for.
Yeah, that's interesting. Cool. In the eye makeup, you do see that real distinctly in this scene. It's really strong, really highlighting his eyes.
He's just a goth.
He's a goth.
Closet goth.
That's what I was kind of
figuring.
Wearing eyeliner. Start seeing piercings and...
Yeah.
Hopefully not. Not around that electricity.
Yeah, that could really be a problem.
Take them all out before he went out.
Those nipple rings have a whole new problem. Just,
Boy, talking about get the heart going.
That's not what I wanted. Well, as we're lowering down here, I'll remind Tom, we told you this sort of last minute. I think we told you during last minute, but we talked about it as well last week with our good friends BK on the air when they were on the show. The sound that we're hearing of the platform now lowering, and we get a much longer silent effect rather than him screaming over the top of it. We hear the clank of the gears and the chain. That's actually what it sounded like on the set. This was not a Foleyed effect later. This is what it literally sounded like on this massive set piece with the true 35-foot ceiling.
That's awesome.
Opening through the ceiling.
That's because that set is so amazing. And so, just any little, you're not surprised. Like, it would sound exactly like that. Because it is what they built exactly what they want the movie to be. That's incredible.
Well, and to think about now, the way that they make movies, all of this would be CGI'd, computer generated somehow. Mm-hmm. You certainly wouldn't put the actors at risk of being around that kind of electrician. Not supposed to. It would be a whole different type of set, and the look and feel would definitely be different. And we've talked about this too, Tom, and get your feedback on it. If this were shot in color, it would it would have a completely different feel and texture to it. And this scene in particular, with the lighting of the face, with the descent, now the smoking monster, it would have a completely different feel to it in color than it does in black and white.
Yeah, definitely. I'm trying to picture it, and it's I can't say that it wouldn't be a good movie, but it would not be what it is, obviously.
Yeah, it would definitely be a different movie.
And not only just because it's it's obviously mimicking the movies that it's mimicking the movies that it's mimicking. But it's that black and whiteness is Peter Bogdanovich would talk about Orson Welles saying, name one good performance in color. There's never been a good performance in color. And you're like, oh, come on, Orson Welles. That's I get what you're saying, but it's a little extreme. But I think that this black and white is kind of amazing. And it's even just the fact that in 1974, as you were saying like earlier on the show, it had been like 5 or 6 years before any of these studios had made a black and white movie at this point. And so just to like force that into reality and make them make the black and white movie, and having 1974 audience members sit down and see a black and white major motion picture, that's just kind of incredible and awesome.
Yeah, and I think it makes our brains work a little bit different, too, that we have to kind of fill in the blanks a little bit more than when we have a color movie and we just kind of absorb what they're throwing at us. You do have to work a little bit in black and white.
Well, I would argue as well that the reason this movie does stand the test of time, besides all the other things we've talked about over and over, by making it look like an, quote, older movie, especially to a modern audience, it sort of becomes timeless. It's part of the classics. I think, Tom, you even said that last minute, that it's a classic. And I think the reason why some of the later Mel Brooks movies sometimes don't age as well is they feel like they're lost. They're not timeless like this. This is just a timeless classic. You could watch it anytime and get sucked into this world. Yeah, there are definitely aspects of this movie that are clearly, early-ish 70s, but you don't think of it at all. I mean, we keep saying 1974. I'm like, 74? Really? Okay. I mean, because it is timeless. It's not pinned down to any film era, really. No, in fact, we made this comment very early on, Walt. Outside of the lecture at the very beginning, where we're in a modern, at the time when the movie was released, a modern, medical school.
Classroom. Yeah.
Every move we've made toward Transylvania, we might as well have also gone back in time. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And since I just said back in time, I have to ask this question now. The body here is smoking as we're lowering it down. Is it smoking because it's hot, or is it like Back to the Future where it's damn cold?
I would say because it just got electrified with a direct current. I mean, this guy just got lit up. So I'm guessing he's kind of smoking from the burn of the electricity.
Okay, so you think he's hot
I
to
think
the
so.
touch. All right, what about you, Tom?
It's weird. I mean, maybe this is what you're getting at, but like Gene Wilder immediately starts like, he's got his hands all over him and stuff.
Exactly.
So it couldn't be that hot. So it's like, I always just sort of even took it as like just sort of a much more vague kind of, he's smoking with the power of science or something, or smoking with like, all the energy that is not necessarily hot or cold, but just, power that has gone through him or something.
It's one of those things, again, you start looking at this 1 minute at a time. It's a really cool dramatic effect. There's absolutely nothing wrong with the effect of all the smoke just sort of spilling out from underneath and around the body as they're slowly lowering it down this 35-foot chained platform. But then he's touching him, and then he puts his head right down on him, and I'm like, if he's that hot that he's still smoking, I mean, you can't be that hot, can it?
I wouldn't think so, but I guess what Tom said does kind of make sense. That it is science,
and it's the discovery.
Yeah, and it's the right. You want the ambiance of science going on, and it definitely adds a little bit more than them just lowering the platform. So.
Or at this point, it could also just be the stink of failure, since he didn't come back to life. It's just sort of oozing off, just to illustrate Frankenstein's failure.
If that were true, I need to start carrying a smoke machine with me on a daily basis.
Now, this is a pretty big dude, and he's been dead. They had to exhume him. He only been dead for like a day because they exhumed him right away. Mm-hmm. But I mean, I wonder is this what happens when you microwave the gases in the body and it just kind of leaches out? This is sort of like a you gotta. It's Mel Brooks, so fart noises are certainly in other movies. Maybe this is just his visual of this is the escaping the body.
Could be. Maybe it's only hot on the inside.
Maybe we should get someone who does cremations in here as an expert. To fill us in on this.
That's sad is I actually know people.
I know somebody too.
Maybe, you know what? Maybe this is like the microwave thing. Have you ever done that? Where you go to microwave something that's been sitting in the refrigerator and you feel the outside, it feels kind of warm on one side, you cut into it and it's still ice cold in the middle?
Yeah.
Well,
Maybe it's the reverse. Maybe the insides are what's really warm and that's causing all the smoke to come out of pores, but the outside's still kind of cool.
Well, it could be like when my grandparents first got their first microwave and threw a piece of pie with aluminum foil in
there. That's always a fun show.
Yeah, it lit up like the 4th of July.
No, that reminds me. I got to tell you a funny story. So the very first day, this guy that was coming to the radio station here, it was his first day at working at a radio station. He was going to be the on-air morning show producer. He was going to be news and beyond for just, some short live segments, but he's brand new. So he's trying to make a great impression, right? Shows up early, gets here. Now it's just me in the morning. The rest of the staff doesn't get here until a little after 8. So we're live at 6 a.m. And I'm sitting there and we're playing a news cart. And all of a sudden he walks in and he's got that look of horror on his face. And he says, I think I just burned down the break room. I'm like, what? He said, no, I think I just burned down. Well, certainly there was fire in the microwave. I'm like, what are you talking about? Wow. Fire in the microwave? He goes, yeah, apparently the cup I brought from home must have had metal and I wasn't paying attention and I think it's dead.
Wow.
He had literally melted the microwave because he had put his mug in there.
Yeah.
He had put his mug in there, forgot that it had metal, hit 60 seconds or whatever, walked away, came back, and there was actual fire in the microwave.
That is awesome. Is that the guy that's here now?
No, he actually now is the voice of the Rome Braves, the minor Braves team.
Okay.
So, yeah, he's a very, very good guy, very awesome broadcaster, but he's thinking, holy crap, I'm getting myself fired day one for burning down the break room.
First day in radio, I burned the station down.
So I'm just decided to segue into that story because you guys reminded me of it, talking about this smoking body. Well, when he gets down to the bottom, there is actually kind of an interesting little effect that I wonder if they tried to mount the camera on the cart itself, because right around, or on the lowering platform itself, because right around second 40, you get this sense of the camera moving, like jostling on the cart.
Yeah, with the platform.
Yeah, definitely.
The doctor. So it's definitely, we're getting not just a bird's eye look. This is truly a camera mounted on the platform for a few seconds. And it's got that weird sort of, jerky effect of where it's moving and everybody's kind of jerking with it.
Yeah. When I was watching that, I noticed that. And, it's kind of a cool feel to it. That you feel like you're riding down with them and just staring at the dummy of Peter Boyle and trying to get his arms around what's going on. And as you're riding down and you feel the shaking of the platform with it, it kind of pulled me in and made me feel like I was a part of what was going on.
Well, if you notice, while it's going down, at first he's got his hand on his forehead, and then he kind of puts the back of his hand, much like you would if you're trying to feel, okay, is there any warmth? Is there a fever? What's going on here? So he's very much going through typical doctor life sign checks. He's going through those ABCs. He checked for is he breathing? Is there a heartbeat? Do I feel any warmth? So he's still very hopeful, even to this point, that maybe it's just taking a few seconds, but get me down so that way I can work on this body.
Yeah.
We'll stop at this.
That's kind of an amazing insight, I guess.
Wow.
Just taking that in.
As we get down to the bottom, and again, this is one of those long, long scenes. We see this super master shot almost, and they do this a lot through this movie, which I really like, because it is sort of a throwback to that style of filmmaking. There are a lot of uses of the master shot. For those who are not into film, usually what you'll do when they call the master, it's usually the camera is as far back, filming everyone in the scene, the whole, as much as that you can see that you need in that shot. And then you can establish it as your, quote, master shot. And then you move in to get your close-ups, your medium shots, your delivery of lines, whatever. This spends a very long time in places where it's just the master shot.
Yeah. We sort of get the sense of like, wow, we built this entire huge, massive, awesome set. Let's juice it for as much as we can. Like, let's show it off as much as we can.
And I think what I love about it, we don't get this a lot in modern movies. I mean, there's handfuls of exceptions, but the on-demand, instantaneous, I need eye candy all the time, hypercuts of less than 2 seconds at a time kind of movie world we live in today, that's why it's noticeable to me that I notice, wow, we're sitting on this shot for 11, 12, 13 seconds before we move.
Yeah.
Well, and it's much more like real life, that you have the long pauses between things happening. And for me, when I watch this versus watching a contemporary movie, which they're great, for their, on their own, you do get more of a big sense of what's going on, that this is important and this is heavy. And
no pun intended.
No pun intended. This is a gigantic 400-pound monster. And but you do get more of a sense of being in the scene than you do just being an outside observer.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. I like it. I like it a lot. I like the fact that they don't rush things. And I feel sometimes there are movies today that we go see where I wonder, why'd you cut away so fast? Why did you just let that play out? And then you go back and Tom, I'm sure you guys talk about this a lot with either deleted scenes and things that you're watching because you're on more modern films, even though you're not Indiana Jones 1989, I think is Last Crusade. So it's not exactly like last year, but certainly much newer than Young Frankenstein. We often find deleted scenes or stuff on the DVDs when you say, well, that kind of would have been nice to leave in there. Why did you feel like you had to shorten the film to take that out of there?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, just let things breathe a little bit. You don't have to be constantly bombarded with action or comedy. Just let things breathe a little bit.
When did that start? Do you have any idea? Like, when did we start having these like hyper cuts? Because I remember someone had done I think it was one of Tony Scott's films. They looked at, because Tony and Ridley Scott would always go back and forth with, sometimes they do a drama, then they do an action. And there was an action movie that Tony Scott directed, and someone had looked at it and said, the average time of any one shot is less than 5 seconds.
Oh, wow.
And there were some that were longer, some that were shorter, but that on average, in a 2-hour movie, you never sit on anything for more than 5 seconds. And it had that feel like it's almost like I don't get a sense to appreciate sometimes what's happening because it's just like image,
Yeah, if that happens now in a movie, if there's like a shot longer than just a few seconds, it's a very stylized, intentional, like orchestrated action scene or something where like, hey, look at us, we're not cutting away from this. And, all these pieces are going to be put in later with computers and stuff. But look at, we're following this action in one uncut thing. But that's not exactly the same thing, is it? That's, there's a difference between that, where you're still getting bombarded, you're just not cutting all the time, to just, letting things happen. It was interesting. I was watching my nephew. I showed him Star Wars, the first Star Wars, when he was about 5 or 6. And I don't know how long it is into the movie, but like Luke's sitting there with his aunt and uncle talking about like, hey, those droids might be stolen, stuff like that. And I was like, oh, is he getting really antsy next to me? Is this boring? Is Star Wars boring? Is this like a really slow movie?
That's kind of crazy to think about.
It is. I mean, obviously it's awesome, but I think, from today's standards, I think, somewhere between Star Wars and maybe even like Return of the Jedi. I think things did start getting really, people always turn to MTV. They're like, oh, the MTV generation, the music videos, they influence the way things are cut and stuff and the attention span and everything. So that would kind of, 83, that's when we got MTV. That's when we got cable. So it kind of makes sense that, early 80s maybe is when things really started like speed up in terms of editing.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Well, I think that's one of the reasons for me, the first episode of season 1 of The Walking Dead stands out as such a good piece of art and storytelling, because you have a couple of scenes where Rick is just riding a horse slowly through a city.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it is really speaking to us about what's going on because the city's dead. There's nothing going on. There's no civilization left. And it is a long, probably 20, 30 seconds that he's just clomping along, and you hear a little wind, you hear the horse, but that's about it. And when I watched that, I just thought, this is so very different from anything else I'm watching. But it's because of that, because you have that long time to take in the tension.
So here's the thing. All three of us are agreeing. All three of us are not because we're old, but just because we understand what makes a movie good. You would think modern day producers, is it just because they're so much younger in Hollywood and they grew up watching MTV, and so they don't understand that there's a yearning maybe in the audience to have these kinds of shots because they work. Obviously The Walking Dead, up until they kind of screwed up the whole plot line there, was a really successful show. We've shown Young Frankenstein to these pre-millennials who have been on the show who were like, I never thought this would be good because first of all, it's black and white. And second, it's old.
Yeah.
So,
Tom, do you think that, what is it with Hollywood that they don't seem to get that there may be, it's okay to slow down?
Yeah, you don't hear any critics anywhere saying it's awesome that this is so fast and it's giving me a seizure and I can't even tell what's going on. Things are cut so crazily. Like, no one is saying, everyone always says, like, oh my God, today's bombardment of the thing, like we're saying right now. And everyone knows, the classic movies from before that whole area, from the 70s and the 60s and the 50s and on, those are always going to be classics and people are always going to like them. So yeah, you would think that studios now would have, I mean, maybe they are just like sort of scared to like, well, it works this way. We know that this works. We're making billions and billions of dollars with, all these Marvel movies and everything. And I love the Marvel movies. I think they're great, but they're probably, if it's not currently broke, they don't want to fix it and experiment and, take any chances with formulas that work right now, I guess.
That could be.
It was just too bad because, they could really do some fun, cool stuff.
I just find myself drawn more and more toward either, whether it's a Netflix series or whether it's an independent movie or going back to some of the older films, I find myself drawn more to this style of storytelling. I don't mind hypercuts in an action sequence. I think, one of the things that saved Star Wars to me was the editing, because if you know anything about Star Wars, George Lucas doesn't know how to direct really anything. He's a great producer, right. And he obviously is a great innovator, and he was a big picture thinker. But if it wasn't for his wife's edits and the scene that I always go back to, I try to explain to my kids, when they escape from the Death Star and you've got the TIE fighter chase and you've got the music going, you've got real fast hypercuts. That works well there because the tension rises for me. We need the tension there. We didn't need it throughout the whole movie, because if we do it through the whole movie, then there's no tension here. And that's why when I saw the first Transformers movie, I really wanted to like it. And I'm like, you can't keep hitting me with explosion after explosion after explosion and one fight after another after another, because by the time I get to the very end fight, I've seen everything you're throwing at me already. There's nothing new. There's nothing. It's just, let's just make the fight last 20 minutes longer.
Well, and if you take a movie like Saving Private Ryan, which is, in my mind, one of the best war movies ever, but definitely one of the best in the last 20 years, you had that first opening 30 minutes where it's just mayhem. I mean, you feel like you've got PTSD when you walk out of that. But then maybe the next 20 or 30 minutes, there's not a whole lot going on.
They have to slow it down. They have to let us catch our breath.
You breathe. They start to fill in the storyline. They gather the cast for the rest of the movie, and then they start walking, and they walk through a field, and they kind of interact with each other, and they cut up, and then you kind of get back into the action, and then you take another breath. I wish that people would camp on that formula a lot more for a while. And
well, that's why I love the Lord of the Rings movies, because I think Peter Jackson followed that. He's like, you know what? It's about relationships. It's about people. It's about good versus evil. It's about sometimes you're thrown in the meat grinder and you're just going to have to deal with what's been given to you. And those slow moments, those moments of realization or coming to grips, I think, to me, it's my favorite film of all time. I think of it as one long movie. I know it's in 3 parts, but that's why it's at the top of my list, because you glean so much of what is of humanity watching that, because it takes its time when it needs to, and then it's action when it needs to. It doesn't have to stay action the whole time.
Well, I want a good story when I go to a movie, and I think that's one of the reasons why I liked Raiders of the Lost Ark so much. And I still like it. When I saw it in the theater last summer, it's a good story, and it's told well. And
well, it has its places where it slows down.
Right, and you get a chance to kind of grind through in your mind, okay, what's going on? What is our goal here? Instead of just having one sandbag after another hit you in the face.
My favorite scene in that whole movie still might be when Indy is explaining the whole thing to Porkins and Musgrove, and with Brody there, like what Tanis is, what the Staff of Ra is, It's just like there's no action at all. It's just like information being given. It's a big, exposition dump, but there's something about the way it's acted and cut that is just extremely exciting and cool and interesting.
And they also don't belabor it so long that you get lost in it.
Right.
Well, there's a technique as a film actor. We a lot of times you hear directors say, "I need more energy," or "I need more, more focus," or whatever. And what you realize with good performances is what we learn is you're saying the word energy or focus. What they really mean is we need you to care about what's happening in this moment. And when the actors care about what they're saying, when that care comes through in film, you're engaged. You're like, okay, I am watching them go through the story of, haven't you guys ever gone to Sunday school? And it goes to the board and he writes and he draws. And it is such a good scene because they're actively listening to the story unfold. You feel like they all care about what's happening in that moment. They're not just regurgitating memorized lines.
I think that's why this minute and this scene in this movie is so powerful, is you are brought in and you care. You care what's happening to the monster. You care what's happening to Dr. Frankenstein. You care about Igor standing there in his Gordon's Fisherman.
Well, not us just caring. You realize Gordon's Fisherman outfit, right?
Yeah. But we as the audience we're sort of in Frankenstein's shoes in a way. We're like, oh, we wanted to see this monster come to life.
Yeah.
Like, that's like the promise of the movie, kind of, and it's not happening, and we're disappointed along with him.
Exactly. And because it takes its time, and this whole scene, there's not much dialogue except at the very beginning of this minute. We're watching the body lower, and we get the very last flashes as this minute comes to an end, where the doctor realizes, okay, the heart isn't beating. I thought maybe I heard a flutter. Maybe it started and stopped. We don't know. We can play what if all day, but he really feels like there's a chance here, and I have to do what I can to resuscitate this being.
Well, and this is such a human moment, too, because any of us who've lived any amount of time have had successes and failures. And if you live long enough, you will have successes and failures. And this is him having that tidal wave kind of crash on him that you just failed.
Or did you fail?
Yeah, or did you fail?
He's in that. I think he's in that panic mode of like failure may be ready to jump on his head.
Yeah. And he even says, "Mama!" Yeah, I mean, he is in the depths of despair.
That's coming up in the next couple of minutes. But we're going to watch a tantrum in the next couple of minutes.
Yeah. I mean,
all right. Well, as we wrap up minute 47 here, Tom, do you have anything that we missed? Anything in your notes or anything you want to add to the discussion that you may have thought of as we were going through it?
No, I think we nailed it. I mean, we said as we were watching the minute earlier, boy, not a lot happens in this minute, but there's a lot to talk about, and I think we nailed it.
Walt, what about you? Your notes?
One thing that we didn't talk about, and I just want to point out, is that when the platform stops, Inga runs to him, and Igor stands by the wheel. And you see the contrast between the two of them, too, of Inga really caring about the doctor, and Igor is still the kind of diligent assistant waiting for the next command.
That's a good catch, because we did notice in last week we were talking about that Inga showed that she's got some blossoming affection for the doctor that he's totally clueless about. But you can see she also cares. Did the experiment work? Is the doctor going to be successful?
Yeah.
And so by running to him, you do get that instant appreciation that Inga cares about him. Hey, there's that word cares again.
There it is.
All right, well, if people care to learn a little bit more about where Tom Taylor hides with his friends Jerry and Pete with the Indiana Jones Minute, Tom, where can they find you?
They can find us over at IndianaJonesMinute.com, where you can find all our old episodes and all our new current episodes and find out stuff about us and find, shirts we're selling, all the fun things that happen with these podcasts. You can find us over there. Oh, and the Movie Hole is maybe, as this comes out, might be back with the Blues Brothers. I'm not sure. But that's what we're working on now. We're working on doing the Blues Brothers is it the movieholepodcast.com? I couldn't think for a second.
That is one of my favorite movies of all time.
It's such a good movie, and I'm really excited to be getting into it. Yeah.
All right,
it's a fantastic movie.
Podcasting magic. This episode will air on May the 29th.
Hey.
So when will yours launch?
That makes it sound like I have a plan or a calendar or things written down.
You don't have anything on a spreadsheet like I do right here in front of me? Because I'm so freaking anally retentive, I had to do everything on a spreadsheet first.
I mean, maybe now I'll just say May 29th. How about that? So let's see if my prediction comes true.
Well, look for it somewhere toward the end of May, maybe early June.
Something like that, or maybe even sooner. Maybe it's already out.
I'm just going to cut all this out. All right, Walt, if somebody wants to find out, or maybe they care to learn a little bit more about Young Frankenstein, where can they go?
You definitely want to go to www.thewilderride.com or join us over on Facebook at www.facebook.com/The Wilder Ride. I'm going to get that right sometime.
It's all right. I'm just waiting for you to realize at age 50, you don't have to say www with every web address
HTTP
/ or like my grandfather is that backslash back? No, you don't want to do backslash, Grandpa. You got to go / Okay. Just type in the browser just the name.
www. Where do you put C:*.win?
Stop it.
Find us on Facebook / The Wilder Ride. I have no idea what I'm talking about. Alan, why don't you tell us where you can find us?
Just go to thewilderride.com and you can find all of our links there. And just, you know what? Obviously, the show needs help. So go to our Patreon page and do what you can, because I got to buy some mental health therapy.
And we're going to put up a survey to find who the weak link on this show is.
Let's see, there's two of us. It's a 50-50 shot. We'll put up a survey. Yeah, that's what we'll do.
It's dangerous.
All right. Till tomorrow. Tom, you mind coming back and playing with us a little bit more with this scene of Dr. Frankenstein trying to bring the creature to life?
I would be happy to.
Well, we would love to have you back tomorrow. Tomorrow being Hump Day, perfect time for us to work with Igor and the monster and everything else. We're going to start with CPR continuing, and we end with the doctor basically throwing a tantrum and saying, "Bastard, I'll get you." So, wow, you got to stick around for that. So come on back tomorrow for more of The Wilder Ride.
Okay, so it's C:/win/ thewilderride.com.
No, it's not.
X equals Y, then run, go to 2.
Put the penny on the electrical
Open
globe.
bracket, ER, close bracket, break.
Stop.